Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Ms. Shwetamari Burade. Welcome you all on behalf of Shan and Kakachi Engineering College, Mumbai, India. We at Saket Research Cell would take this opportunity to thank each and every one of you present here today for this hybrid webinar series, Innovative and Emerging Technology in the Field of Research, in collaboration with all our partners. Today, I'm addressing you to the webinar on unlocking value of blockchain networks with privacy enhancing technology. And the speaker for this afternoon is Dr. Pankaj Dayama. Our speaker, Dr. Pankaj Dayama, has PhD in mechanism design from the Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. He is a senior researcher, senior technical staff member, master inventor, manager blockchain, multi-enterprise business networks at IBM Research. He has published over 20 papers in peer-reviewed conferences and journals. He has more than 10 issued patents and 40 filed patents in the United States Patents and Trademarks Office to his credit. His technical areas are algorithms and theory, blockchain, knowledge discovery and data mining, and operations research. Now, before handing over to our speaker, I would like to make a note to all my attendees that if you have any queries or you want to ask any questions to our speaker throughout the webinar, you can ask it via the Q&A chat box. The most frequently asked questions will be answered towards the end of the webinar. The feedback link will also be shared towards the end. So now, sir, I would like to hand over to you. Pankaj, sir?
Yeah, are you able
Yes,
to
sir.
hear me?
Yes,
Okay,
sir. Yes, sir.
let me start sharing my screen first. Just a
Yes, sir.
sec. Let me know if you can see the charts.
Yes, I can see it, but it's not in the slideshow mode. Now it is in the slideshow mode. Yes, sir.
Okay, just I'm audible, right?
Perfectly, sir.
Okay, great, thanks. So let me start. So first of all, yeah, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on which part of the world you are joined from. Hope all of you are staying safe at the time of this pandemic. First of all, I'll start by thanking the organizers for providing me this opportunity to deliver this webinar. I would also like to thank all the attendees who have turned up to attend this talk. I hope you get something out of it. So with that, I'll get into the directly into the talk, right? So in this talk, essentially, I have tried to split it into two parts logically. So in the first part, I'll try to briefly provide an overview of the current state of affairs in blockchain technology and what are the few successful deployments available in industry. And in the second half, what I'll try to do is provide a glimpse of a few of the research problems that arise when we want to actually derive more value out of these blockchain networks. And what is the role of technologies like privacy preserving technologies like multi-party computation, zero knowledge. I'll keep it at a high level, but what is the role of some of these technologies to help unlock values in these networks, right? So that's the plan. With that, let me get started. So as everyone is aware, like COVID-19 has caused unprecedented impact on supply chains in different industries. It has highlighted significant faults, fault lines in the supply chains that has put companies under tremendous pressure and unable to serve their customers. The issues basically relate to handling like quick change in demand signals, as there are limitations in current demand sensing and planning capabilities to accurately predict predict this demand and supplies in case of disruptions. Then there are issues with supply-based visibility itself beyond, let's say, tier one suppliers. Recent reports have claimed that 90% of Fortune 1000 companies have tier two suppliers in the regions of China which are most impacted or affected by the first phase of pandemic, right? So lack of trusted visibility of inventory, as you don't even know the supply base, so you don't have visibility on the inventory levels as well. It is tough for organizations to make optimal supply chain decisions, right? The other aspect is on this quick onboarding of new suppliers. If there is some disruption in the supply chain, you want to shift your supply base or network. How do you quickly onboard suppliers to meet critical demand? That has been a challenge, and there are regulations to be followed when we want to onboard new suppliers, as ideally you don't want to get any bad actor in your supply chain, right? So typically in certain industries the time to onboard new supplier may range from 30 to 40 days. So these are several challenges in the supply chain in general because of this disruption. So what is required is something to help build a smarter supply chain that is more dynamic, responsive, and interconnected to organizations' ecosystems, right? One that can provide all the participants in the ecosystem based on their roles, end-to-end visibility, some real-time insights. And that is where companies want to leverage technologies such as blockchain, IoT, etc., to maintain this business, to help maintain this business continuity, right? So technology has a huge role to play in this. So in this, sorry, the transitioning is happening properly. Okay, sure. So in this post-COVID era, what feel is that blockchain can play a critical role in helping come up with more resilient supply chain by providing trusted and timely visibility of not only your supply base, the state at which the supply chain is operating, and also support and rapid onboarding of new suppliers. So it enables like a essentially a trusted data exchange while maintaining privacy of your supply chain relationships and other things, right? So that's where the technology would be useful. We'll get into details of how it will, how the technology will help. In a slightly different context, like World Health Organization is also building a blockchain-based control and communication system for precise detection of COVID-19 carriers and infected hotspots, right? Infection hotspots. So in this context, World Health Organization is partnering with technology giants like IBM, Microsoft, Oracle, and other government agencies. So this solution essentially will help integrate multiple verified data sources to provide what we can say trusted information that would be useful for doctors, scientists, and researchers who want more reliable data to come up with water inference and some action, right? To decide course of action, right? So that's where technology is playing a big role. So with that motivation, let me directly jump into what this technology is all about. So blockchain is nothing but a transaction at a high level. It's a transaction processing system that is allowing like mutually distrusting parties in a business network. So parties do not trust each other with the data and some of the stuff they are reporting, right? So mutually distrusting parties in a business network to work with one system of record, right? So when we talk about one common record or a shared ledger, there are certain key properties that define this business network, right? So one of them is like the consensus. So the participants of this network collectively agree to whether a transaction that goes onto the ledger, whether it's a valid transaction, and also they have consensus on the order in which the transactions get committed, right? So there are different consensus protocols, but there is a consensus on how the ledger gets updated. So that's a very important property. Second is immutability. Like once you have this ledger which is maintained by different shared ledger, no participant can tamper the transaction once it's agreed upon and committed to the ledger. So no participant can tamper with these records. The other property is finality. Like once the transaction is committed, it cannot be rolled back, right? So once you commit a transaction, if you want to cancel that or revoke that transaction, then you have to submit a new transaction that can reverse that. But you cannot roll something back once it is committed. And the fourth key property is that this ledger is append-only data structure. And this essentially helps provide complete provenance of all events that are related to, let's say, a asset you are monitoring, let's say some asset which you are shipping through a supply chain, some part or component you're monitoring. So this ledger, because it's a read-only data structure, append-only data structure, sorry. So it provides a provenance of all the events related to that asset, how the asset was transferred from one owner to another, what conditions it was maintained, so on and so forth, but no one can modify any of these things. So that's at a very high level what blockchain technology and what are the key properties. But if you look at blockchain networks, right, so one can broadly classify these into two types, permissionless blockchains and permission blockchains. So examples, popular permissionless blockchain is Bitcoin. So that's where all this started. So at a high level, to summarize, it's a no identity mechanism, and essentially it uses wisdom of the network, right? The overall participants of the network to validate the transaction, right? So for that, I talked about the consensus mechanism, right, in the previous slide. So in this case, they use consensus algorithm like something called as proof of work to achieve this validation of transaction, where the validating nodes, right, essentially they have to burn a lot of electricity, so they have to solve a crypto puzzle to prove that a transaction block is actually genuine block is getting added to the blockchain. Likewise, in the permission network, they are mostly like business blockchains, where you know the identity of the participants in the network and incentives are in place to prevent fraudulent behavior, right? So the identity and type of consensus mechanisms that you use for permission blockchain networks would be very different from, and the motivations and examples are very different from what you get in permissionless networks, right? So this chart, essentially what I tried to do was to compare different open source. So for this talk, for the purpose of this talk, right, we will focus on business networks and permission blockchain networks. So this chart basically summarizes different open source frameworks that are available for business blockchains, that is permission blockchains. And for each of them, like again, there are relative strengths and weaknesses of each of these frameworks. Yeah, I'll just skim through some of these things, but the key thing is like so most of the focus for this would be the major, I mean, the market leader in this case, the most popular one is the Hyperledger Fabric. And mostly this talk again will focus on Hyperledger Fabric, and IBM is one of the main contributors to this Hyperledger Fabric, and it has maximum market share, and a lot of deployments and blockchain solutions and deployments are happening on top of this, right? So again, the focus will be on this, and IBM in general is helping customers build blockchain solutions for past several years, and we have several active networks that are currently processing live transaction. So the slide shows few of the industries where these networks are operational. For example, if we look at something like a trade finance industry, right? So in this case, what's happening is that once one is leveraging the information visibility in blockchain, supply chain blockchain. So in trade finance, essentially what happens is one manages the capital that is required for international trade. So World Trade Organization estimates in general that 80% of the global trade is supported by some sort of financing or credit insurance. So in this case, trade financing, an exporter of an item needs to mitigate the risk of non-payment, while from the importer, while importer wants to mitigate the supply risk, right? So the function of trade financing is to essentially act as a third party to remove the payment risk and the supply risk. So while providing exporters, in this case, access to accelerated receivables, so whatever payment is required, and the importers with extended credit period, right? And institutions that provide this capital leverage visible on blockchain, essentially they use the information visibility that is available on blockchain to better evaluate the companies for lending and reduce their risk. So that's where most of the solutions in this space are focused on, right? So I'll talk about very few other popular platforms and solutions that have been developed. So essentially, blockchain essentially is trying to provide provenance as products move through their life cycle in the supply chain, right? So efficiency gains from blockchain technology can help you because there's a lot of efficiency you're gaining by implementing something on blockchain that can help you trace wider range of goods instead of just earlier you anyways used to trace large ticket items, right? But now a wider range of goods can be traced, and this information can assist consumers because now you have complete traceability. It's very helpful for consumers to make more informed purchasing decisions. For example, some consumers may want to know if fair trade labor standards are upheld in some of the products that they are purchasing, if products have been, what are they buying, have not been tested on animals, so on and so forth, right? So blockchain can essentially play a role of trusted third party by uniquely identifying the products and certifying their authenticity, right? So consumers can see the full chain of custody of an item that is flowing through the network. So here is another example of a platform being developed by IBM and Maersk for global trade. So, like 80% of the goods that we consume on daily basis are carried through some global shipping company. And the process overall, there is a high degree of manual and paperwork that is required, that is involved in the end-to-end process. And this platform, what it is providing is that increased transparency in terms of the events and data for shipping containers. So all that information as the container is traveling through the journey, all the events are getting captured and data is captured and shared between appropriate participants on the network, right? So on the right side, what you see are different participants of these networks. You have inland transportation, cargo owners, and customs authorities and different entities who are handling the shipments. They participate and enter their data, and that data is managed on the network. And that is shared between appropriate participants. And right now, the status of this is that people do have real-time access to these different events regarding the shipment, and mostly all the trade is now in this case is paperless. It's digitized, so that reduces cost and increases the efficiency. And for this platform now, the adoption has been very good. So very top ocean carrier, cargo carrier companies like CMA, CGM, MSA, they have recently joined. So, which essentially means that nearly 50% of world's ocean container cargo will potentially be available. The data related to those 50% of the containers will be available on this network, right? So that's a huge amount of data, and the real-time visibility of that would be very helpful in different supply chains. These items may belong to different supply chains, and real-time visibility would definitely be helpful in taking a lot of operational decisions in some of these supply chains, right? So this platform essentially will become a trusted source of information for those supply chains. The other popular network is like IBM Food Trust platform. This is used for tracking the provenance of food through the complex network, right from farmer to the end consumer. So this platform essentially comes up apart from the provenance, it has comes up with several modules. So one is the trace module, which essentially enables location, you to track location and status of different goods. Then there is certification module, which takes care of messy paperwork. Everything is digitized in terms of, let's say, the inspection, quality certificates, and other things. And that digitized information is made available to someone downstream in the supply chain. And the other module is like Fresh Insights module, where which helps in carrying out like real-time analytics and insight, like how much time, for example, let's say how much time is spent in a warehouse for a given item, what is the impact of that on the shelf life of the item. And essentially all this information can help you make supply chains efficient and in some cases reduce the waste, right? If you know the state of the item, what is the how it has traversed to the supply chain, and you know that certain items in certain places in the supply chain, the remaining life for that item is pretty less, then you can optimize the flows or take better decisions so that the overall wastage in such a network is reduced, right? So that's about this Footrest. Then this is one more very popular and important network, Trust Your Supply blockchain platform. So as I told earlier, right? So this about the quick onboarding, why it is critical and whenever there's a disruption, right? So such a platform is essentially enabling quick onboarding of suppliers by essentially when supplier gets onboarded, right? So this platform essentially what it's providing is that a good way of managing the supplier information on a blockchain network. So the supplier, there are benefits like different participants in this network, right from supplier, buyer to verifiers, auditors, and certification authorities and issuers, right? So the benefit is like the supplier, ideally, whenever supplier wants to get onboarded or do business with the buyer, for each of them, he has to provide all the necessary information and get the qualification done, and then only he can start interacting and doing. But with this common network, what's happening is that supplier has to provide all the information only once. And there are like verifiers who can provide the verification service and verify some of this information. Certificate issuers can issue certificates for authenticity and different metrics for a given supplier. And because all these things are available on the network, so now when a new buyer wants to onboard a supplier, he can access this network, get all the information, see whether all its criteria is met, and based on that, quickly onboard the supplier, right? So that's where this and this specific solution also has been used during COVID times, where hospitals want to quickly onboard like new medical equipment suppliers to fight against this medical supply chain shortages, right? So this particular platform and network has been really helpful because it's providing again trusted information for other participants, right? So what we have seen so far is that how these individual networks and platforms like TradeLens, IFT, uh, how they have been useful in carrying certain business, improving the efficiencies, right? But how is the evolution of this thing happening, right, in industry and other places? So right now, what we have done is like all these networks are like data and value and information islands, right? But now there's a lot of focus on making these networks talk to each other so that it can help create more value, right? So because each network is let's say you can have a trade finance network talk to something like a TradeLens network, and using some of the information in the other network, they can improve, make some changes to some of the ways they operate, right, or reduce their risk. So how do you make these networks talk to each other? And that is where some of the our focus has been in last couple of years, right? So one is how do you create values in this network, because you want these different networks and participants to collaborate. You want to preserve the privacy of their data, but also help create values for the participant. So how do you create values in this network? By using techniques of privacy preserving collaboration, right? And the second one is how do you have seamless flow of assets information across these networks, which can provide still the blockchain like trust guarantees and make these networks interoperable, right? So these are like two areas of which has gained a lot of traction in last year or so. And in my talk, essentially, I'll focus on the first problem of privacy preserving collaboration, how it can help, right? So with that, I'll move into the second part where I'll talk about this how blockchain, privacy, and AI can be used to build like truly collaborative business networks. So I'll start with a few simple examples to help you understand what we are exactly talking about, right? So let's take a simple example of, let's say, Alice. She wants to apply for a credit card, and the credit card company has certain process where they want to see what if sufficient balance is being maintained by Alice in her bank account, right? So currently they will ask Alice to show her bank statement. So so the requirement is that only they want to check the minimum balance, but this sharing the bank statement, Alice is revealing much more than that, right? Not just she's revealing the exact balance, the transaction patterns, and so on and so forth. A lot more information is getting revealed. But ideally, in an ideal world, what Alice would want is that the credit card company to be convinced, if she maintains whatever minimum balance requirement, right, as specified by the company, she wants to reveal only that, I mean, prove the company that the bank account she is maintaining that much balance without revealing any additional information, right? So how do you, sorry. So how can she convince her? So that's the problem we want to see, right? So that's of interest. How can she convince of minimum or average balance or whatever requirement is there without revealing any of the exact information, right? Let's look at one more slightly more complex example. So consider a setting of determining, let's say, a market clearing price in double auction. So double auction is where there are a set of buyers and set of sellers, and they want to do some trade. You want to do the matching, and you want to come up with what is the clearing price, right, for the markets. So in this case, the suppliers would, and this auction we are talking about is a sealed bid auction where suppliers and buyers do not want to reveal their bids to anyone else except the auctioneer, right? And the suppliers have offers to make and buyers have bid. They submit it to the auctioneer. Auctioneer will run certain algorithm, which is known algorithm, right? Given a supply offers and bids, this is how the matching would, this is how I'll run the algorithm and decide the winners, right? So the auctioneer will run the algorithm, decide, announce the clearing price, and the market will get cleared. And yeah, so market clearing price is essentially in this case is based on some supply demand equilibrium. Some algorithm, known algorithm is there that would decide what is the maximum traded volume that can be traded given the bids and ask, right? But in this case, if you look at this, like auctioneer has a lot of options of cheating, let's say suppliers or buyers, right? What if the auctioneer misreports the execution of the algorithm? Or auctioneer can leak the bids or offers of a buyer or supplier to his competitor, right? So that is also very much possible. So all this is possible, and he can escape as none of the participants know the bids and offers, right? So that is a challenge. So the auctioneer in this case is not trusted with computation of correct price or determination or allocations of bids, as the determination allocation bids and asks are sealed, right? So can we conduct an auction in such a way that auctioneer cannot influence the outcome, right? So can he prove the integrity of the computation? So that's the second example. The third example, again, more of a collaborative framework where you have this B2B platform where there are suppliers and buyers procure from suppliers, and you have historical data, and the requirement is that you want a trusted system for rating the suppliers and in this ecosystem such that the buyers, if they want to have new contracts or new suppliers onboarded, they this information is helpful for them to make future procurement decisions, right? So that's what you want to enable on this B2B platform. But what are the privacy issues in this case that one wants to address or look at is that these business relationships are sensitive, like who is transacting with whom, who are the suppliers for a given buyer. They are very sensitive, and you don't want to leak that information to others. You want to support this system, but no one should get to know who is transacting with whom, who buys from whom, should not be accessible. what rating did a specific buyer give to a supplier should not be visible to the supplier. Supplier should not know that, even though again, no one should know that what rating a buyer gave to a supplier. Overall, at a platform level, you still want to come up with this aggregate rating, but no one should get to know this information. And the rating should be against valid purchase transactions. Like a buyer should not be able to rate a supplier if he has not transacted. But we don't know the transaction thing you are hiding, so you'd want all the valid against valid purchase. Still want guarantee that all these ratings are against valid purchase transactions, right? So this is the third example. The other one is in terms of, again, I'm giving you flavors of example and tell you how these techniques would be useful so that you can appreciate it more. So other is in terms of AI, right? Let's say privacy preserving AI model verification, where let's say you have something like a decentralized Kaggle platform. So AI model, in this case, the requirement is that AI model provider, whoever is building the model, would like to get fairly rewarded by the requester who is requesting for the model based on the performance. But for evaluation, he may not be willing to share the model in plain text, right? So he doesn't want to share the parameters of the model, whatever you are training. And from the requester's perspective, he may want to verify the performance of the model before he decides whether to buy it or start using it, right? If it's outright buy or if it's a service that the model builder is providing, he wants to be convinced about the performance. Also, many a times during evaluation, the model provider may give a very good performing model, and later on when he's used deploying, he may use a different model, right? Because maybe it's resource intensive. So a lot of issues, and you do not trust the others in the ecosystem, right? So the privacy problem is that you want to maintain the model confidentiality of the model. So no knowledge of the model should be gained by the requester. And selection fairness guarantee in the sense that the requester only selects the model which is which is most accurate model. He does that selection. And delivery authenticity is in terms of whatever model I have given for evaluation, the same model. If I'm not delivering the model but providing it as, let's say, an API or a service, then I am using the same model for when I deploy it, right? So that's the delivery authenticity. So again, this is a problem we are interested in looking at, right? And the last one is this, when we talk about, let's say, multiple companies, they have their own networks where they're operating multiple insurance company. And right now, the insurance fraud is a very big problem in this industry, right? And they would like to compute, let's say, the average fraud rate or identify whether a particular claim is a fraud or not. They want to collaborate, right? And this they want to achieve, let's say, the average fraud rate for the industry without revealing their fraud rate data to others. And everyone should get the same output. So no one can maliciously tamper the system and only receive everyone should get the same output, and the output should be correct, right? So it should correspond to the average fraud rate for the industry, right? So all these collaborations, like it can be in supply chains or different places, it can be, let's say, vertical collaboration across competitors. They may be competitors, horizontal collaboration across competitors, or vertical collaboration across entities in the network for different use cases and applications. That's very relevant. And why people want to collaborate is the various reasons, right? You want to reduce your resource cost if you want to do some pooling, or you want to do some collaborative benchmarking, compute KPIs, or in certain networks of fraud, you want to come up with early warning systems or root cause for something, right? So there are various reasons why it's pretty obvious why people want to collaborate. But what are the key barriers is trust. You do not trust others with the data, information sharing, and there is a asymmetry in the information that you are providing, right? So you want to the incentives that you get should be proportional to what information you are sharing, and there's competition and legal aspects because of which you cannot share your data, right? So that's where you want to preserve privacy of the data. So that's where some of the techniques, like in the first example which I gave, where you wanted to apply for credit card, something like zero knowledge proofs can be helpful to prove that the statement is authentic, that whatever statement I'll not submit the exact statement. Alice in this case will not submit the exact bank statement, but let's say some special hash of that statement can be submitted, and she shows that the statement is signed by bank, let's say, so it's authentic. And using this technique, she can prove that the balance every month was greater than certain amount, and without revealing, let's say, exact balance, what was the transaction. None of these things are. So the entire control of the data still resides with Alice, but still she's able to convince the credit card company about whatever requirements are there, right? Other technique may be helpful, like multi-party computations for insurance, coming up with this average fraud rate in insurance company, right? So the essential building blocks in this case would be you have the trusted data which is provided by blockchain, and some of these other building blocks would be helpful. So I'll quickly get into the techniques, give an overview of those techniques and the use cases. So essentially what we are talking about is, like, if you guarantee more privacy to the participants, they can share more data for collaboration, and you can in the end create more value for everyone, right? So this is the overall theme where these techniques would be helpful in business networks, right? So if you have this industry networks, like we talked about TradeLens and FootTrust, so what the technique like blockchain is providing is protecting the business sensitive information and providing a secure shared data, right? So it's removing the barriers for growth of the network. So that's what is provided by blockchain. Whereas these other techniques in terms of uh, analytics and AI based on whatever derived data is there, and sanitized derivatives of private data, ability to share that. So that is provided by the privacy preserving techniques, and that will help you create more value from this industry networks, right? Building AI models, sharing data, real-time KPIs. So that's where these, so this is where the AI on this blockchain data with privacy will help you create more value, right? So with that, let me get into a bit more details of these techniques. So what does the zero knowledge proof technique actually involve, right? So in this case, broadly, there are like these steps where first Alice and Bob, they will be involved in, let's say Alice has a secret data and Bob wants to prove some property on the data, right? So there'll be a setup process that is involved. And once the setup is done, this is like a set of keys that get generated. And once the setup is done, what Alice will do, Alice will not know what property Bob will want her to prove, right, on the data. So first she will make a binding commitment of the data, which is like some hash of the data. And then Bob can ask, okay, whether your data satisfies certain property. And based on that, Alice will generate certain proof and share it with Bob. This is again like looks like a random string. Alice cannot make anything about the data from this proof. And based on, but one thing Bob can do is that based on the commitment which was submitted in the first step and the proof, he can verify whether the Alice data satisfied whatever property. This property was for a proof, right? So he can verify that with no additional information. So at the end of this exchange of information, right, what Bob can get is whether the data satisfies that property or not. Answer to just that query. No additional information is getting shared. So ZKPs have been used in different use cases, so like in Bitcoin case, right? And the Bitcoin transactions are like fully transparent, so everyone can use a Bitcoin block explorer to check like who was the sender, at least the sender's address and the Bitcoin recipient's address and how many Bitcoins were transferred, right? But there is one more which is managing Zcash. So Zcash transactions are private. They use the zero knowledge technique. So where no one sees who is the sender, who is the recipient. So these are unknown addresses and what amount is getting transferred. But at the end of this, still people on the network can verify whether this is can validate this transaction, in the sense that whatever amount this transaction was, let's say of amount X Bitcoins, then they can verify that whatever this amount, let's say X, this account was deducted X Bitcoins were deducted from this account, whatever original balance was there, that was updated correctly, and X amount was deposited in this account, right? So that's what Zcash enables. So So essentially, this technique is to show that one party can prove to another party that a statement is true without revealing anything else, and there are certain properties you want these protocols to satisfy, like only honest provers should be able to convince honest verifiers, and dishonest provers should not be able to convince. So these protocols will guarantee all these properties, right? And there are different flavors. Again, interest of time, I may just skip through this interactive, non-interactive. And so a simple example over here would be, let's say you have certain data which is committed onto blockchain, and you want to prove that whatever data is committed to the blockchain, you have committed some hash. Your actual pre-image of that hash, whatever is your private data, is the hash of it hashes to this value which is committed, right? So you want to prove the knowledge that you know some W which hashes to H. So that's where you can use zero knowledge proof to show this hash, right? And in that bank, the balance update example, right? Let's say you have three values whose hashes are known, and these are the original values which are like private. And there is a claim, someone claims that the HZ is whatever the hash of Z, Z is sum of X plus Y. And only these three hash values are given to you, right? So ideally you want to return true if this statement is true, right? So whenever your zero knowledge proof protocol should return true only if hx is a hash of x, hy is hash of y, hz is hash of z, and on top of that z is x plus y. So only if this condition is satisfied, then only your protocol should return one. And the key thing is that x, y, z are not known to the verifier. So again, you want to prove the knowledge of XYZ given the inputs HX, HY, right? So that's where, so there has been why this has become suddenly popular and you're seeing so many examples is that this techniques have been there for years now, more than 2 decades, but the verification proving earlier it was very slow. Now it has become very fast. With new and new protocols, it's very fast to verify some of these computations. And that's where it has become very popular and has a lot of applications and different things we want to do on blockchains, right? Not just blockchains in various areas. So some things you want from these protocols for blockchain applications, we'll not get into this. So the challenges in adopting this is that there is a costly setup process. The first step, right? For each property you want someone to prove, you have to do this setup and the proof generation set. So it's very costly in that case. So what we have been working on is that how can we have one-time setup for the class of operations that you want to suggest, right? So and we have developed a framework to prove properties on a very structured document, right? So let's say this is a document, some structured JSON document, and these are the structure of the document, the keys which are known, but the values are private. And the document owner in this case in our framework can commit to these values, one-time hash commitment. And then anyone can ask him, let's say auditor wants to ask him that whether tax computation was done correctly, right? So he can generate proofs. Once the commitment hash commitment is done, he can generate proofs which can be verified by the auditors. So likewise, any property you want him to prove on the secret document, he can prove those properties in a much more scalable way, right? So the predicates can range from different complexities of predicates. You want to prove that, okay, in this JSON, whatever you had committed, you just have a one hash commitment, random looking string, right? And you want to show that the item amount was correct. I'm highlighting very simple predicates, but this overall framework is very powerful. All those use cases which I defined earlier in terms of, let's say, model verification and different use cases. So this is backend, this is the core framework, and this on top of this, you write multiple layers to support those use cases, right? So what it essentially involves is that the key steps are like given a grammar that you want to support the grammar of predicates, you generate certain keys which will be used by your algorithms. And then given a document, you compute the hash of the document. And then given the predicate you want to prove, you generate a proof using the proving keys. And whatever proof and document hash is there, using that you generate an verification key. You can check whether that property is true or not. So this part can be done by the prover. And once the prover generates the proofs, he can pass on the document hash and proof to the verifier. And verifier in this case, let's say the auditor can check whether the property holds for that document or not, right? So that's way to look at this chart. So now how do you do it on blockchain is that you have a structured document. So someone, any business document, you submit this document, structured document hash on blockchain. Then the client, if there is a requirement as per the blockchain process, smart contract, that your document should satisfy some property. So no one else can verify that, right? Because you have just submitted hash onto blockchain. But now you can generate a proof using those toolbox, whatever will be provided. And then this proof and toolbox, now the smart contract can run, verify whether that property is satisfied by a document. And based on that, you can execute certain business logic. You say that, okay, it's a valid invoice because maybe the tax computation is properly done. And based on that, you go ahead and process that invoice. So this is a simple way of how this can be executed as smart contract and trigger certain smart contract logic on Hyperledger Fabric, right? Now, how do we use this for generating different types of insights, right? So earlier I talked about the trade logistics network, right? Where people are monitoring these events, what are happening on trade lanes and container as the container is getting shipped, right? But in today's world, there's no collaboration possible. Let's say there's no network level visibility in the sense that, let's say someone wants to say that, okay, you are tracking so many shipments, events, and let us compute a lane wise average shipping delay, right? For a given lane, let's say COVID, you want to see if there is disruption on a given lane. You want to compute lane wise average shipping delay. But this data is held by different carriers. They don't want to share their data amongst each other, right? They don't trust each other. Their data is in their channel. They only have visibility, right? So then how do you compute this network levels KPIs without revealing the sensitive data? So that's where what is developed is a protocol using zero knowledge proofs where each service provider publishes the proofs of the performance. So they directly claim that, okay, my performance on this lane, whatever I have catered to the shipment, the average delay is, let's say, 5 hours. Platform can verify whether he has claimed whatever he has claimed is correct or not, and then publish a performance at a network level, which any shipper, now he wants to decide how to ship, right? As a shipper, I have my goods, I want to ship it. Now I can query this, I can compute get the average delay, which I can verify for different lanes, and based on that, I can decide, okay, this is the route I want to take for my shipment, right? So now I get access to a network level verifiable information, right? And this is a service that the platform can provide, right? So again, I think I don't have too much time, but essentially these are the steps involved where based on each shipper, each carrier, based on what a shipment it is handling, he can commit the proof of the performance as a second step, and then the overall platform can publish network level different KPIs, which can be used by the end consumer, like the new shipper or someone, right? Yeah. Likewise, if you want different networks to operate, right? Let's say in the shipment network, if there is an invoice and bill of lading, which the exporter has and wants to get it financed from the trade finance network. Right now, these are independent networks. So they do not talk to each other. But let's say exporter submits an invoice and bill of lading, which is active in this trade logistics network, and he wants to get it financed in trade finance network, right? So the trade finance network in this case would ideally like to get a trusted information from trade logistics network that whether such a bill of lading, whatever this exporter is claiming that he has generated this bill of lading, whether it's actually present in this network, right? So in this case, how do you enable this, right? So again, using this protocol, which at the back end uses this zero knowledge technology, essentially, again, the trade logistics network can make periodic commitments of the approved bill of lading. So these are hash commitments, which no one can look into details. But whenever the exporter, the trade finance network queries this network to ask him with a query that whether this bill of lading, specific bill of lading, is present in the network, they can generate a proof which this guy can verify, right? But the data is grounded. The commitment is done periodically once. So once the data is grounded, then you can generate these proofs. The last one is this model performance verification. Now for the class of models you want to train, right? Let's say it's a linear models, let's say linear regression or something, or you have more complex models. So based on the class of models that you want to train, right? So neural networks, deep neural, whatever, totally non-linear or more of linear models if you want to operate. So based on that, you do a setup process where you generate the keys. And now as a Kaggle participant, let's say I have developed some models, so model parameters, if it's a linear model, then all the beta terms, let's say I make a commitment and a hash of that commitment, and send this to the platform, right? The hash commitment to the platform. Now, whenever the test data is there, I have committed my model. I have not looked at the test data so far. So what are the this thing, in this case, the platform, whoever is running this, the requester will get all the hash commitments for all the people who have participated. Now, whenever he releases the test data on which he wants to select, let's say, the best model based on this test data. So far the requester has not received any model. So he provides the test data and I have the special hash whichever I have sent. So now as a model builder, what I'll do is on this test data and this special hash, I will run I have access to my model, let's say regression, I compute the performance of that model, right? So if it's classification, I compute accuracy, F1 score, whatever it is, right? I compute the performance and I generate a proof where I claim that, okay, my model performance, if I actually on the test data, if my model performance is, let's say, accuracy is 80%, I generate a proof saying that my model performance is 80%. And this proof is essentially now submitted. This is again a random string which is provided to this requester. So requester collates all these proofs from different entities who are participating. So once you have the proof, this hash of the model commitment and the test data, then he can verify, the requester can verify whether whatever he's claiming is actually true or not. If he's claiming 80%, if his model performance is 80%, whereas he's claiming 90% and sharing some proof, then it will fail at this stage. You cannot verify that because the commitment has been done earlier and you get the test data after that, right? So then you can, so the model is grounded at this stage. So that's where you have more correctness and proofs and other things can be generated using this framework, right? So essentially what I have covered and tried to cover, or at least motivate in today's talk, is that there is a blockchain platform where people are building solutions, but now you also need to enable some of these crypto primitives, use these crypto primitives to actually provide more secure, confidentiality preserving AI, right, on top of that. So if you want, everyone wants to protect privacy, but in general build different. So whatever I gave examples, there are no examples on model training and other thing, but similar example, I mean, if you want to collaboratively train model on your data, then again similar protocols can be used. So how do you, this crypto layer on top of this will help you have a secure and confidentiality preserving AI layer built on top of it. And the last aspect which I did not touch upon, and this is more of incentives, right? How do you have design mechanisms in such a way that if you are contributing to the accuracy, let's say for a AI model, your value of the information you are contributing is much more than you need to be you need to be incentivized in that proportion. How do you have good mechanisms? And so game theoretic and strategic aspects, how do you basically enable collaboration, right? So that is one more independent research thread that would be useful for us to in fact build a truly collaborative network. Okay, that's all I had for today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. There are a few questions I would like to take. So, may I ask you, sir?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, just a second, sir. Yeah, so my first question is, how can blockchain improve business?
So blockchain, if you look at this business, right, when we are talking about multiple entities and they are not trusting each other with the information, right? So in this case, for the COVID situation, right, you don't have visibility into your supply chain, supply base, who all are your suppliers, or what's the state of inventory at different stages of the supply chain, right? So supply chain visibility can be improved because now you are tracking everything on blockchain and you have complete real-time visibility of what's the state of the supply chain. Similarly, supply-based visibility. And all this can be done in such a way that if I am a participant of blockchain, I don't want my data to be shared with certain entities, then I can specify that requirement. And based on that, you still have control over what data gets shared with whom. But now eventually whatever data is visible, that is a trusted data, right? So once the ecosystem agrees that, okay, this is the data we want to maintain as a business, everyone agrees that this is the data we want to monitor and maintain on blockchain, then once that is captured, you have a trusted data source through which you can now take your more informed, better business decisions, right? So that's where blockchain, where right now most of the communication is point to point and there's no complete visibility. So this platform essentially enables you to get a more single source of truth, in the sense that, yeah, common trusted data ledger based on which you can now take all your insights, and decision layer can be built on top of that. So this is more of a data source for your decision engine.
Okay, sir. So the next question is, will blockchain eliminate banks?
Yeah, so I don't think so. So banks, it will help banks in providing them information that would be useful for them to reduce their risks. Like many of the cases which have been popular in supply chain financing for SMEs or trade financing or other things. Now, bank take a risk when they finance, let's say, some invoices or something, right? So they take certain risk, and because for that risk, they charge certain rates, right? Now with blockchain, because you have trusted information, so the risk that is taken by the bank is reduced. And because of that, they can pass on some of these benefits essentially to the other players, right? Suppliers whose invoices are getting financed, right? So this is again an information source that would be useful for banks to improve their operations and reduce their risk. But I don't see it replacing banks.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we still have the physical ones.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So last question, has blockchain ever been hacked?
So the security of blockchain is a tricky, it comes up in various places. So I mean, the blockchain guarantee it provides is that the information whatever is captured on blockchain is immutable. So no one party can hack and add something to the blockchain which gets replicated everywhere, right? Because you need a consensus mechanism to update the ledger. But just the security of ledger is like, now you have multiple nodes who are maintaining a copy of the ledger. So if you have one system, you can build a security around it. So now you have to handle multiple such systems, right? Because your data is residing in multiple places. Your same ledger is getting replicated in multiple places. So your weakest link, if there is one link or one place where it is not secure, then essentially people may get access to that data, right? But someone influencing or adding something to the ledger, that cannot be done, because now you have the entire consensus mechanism and other things that will be useful. Right? That is basically being executed when you update the ledger, right? Yeah.
So basically, the data will not be changed, but it can be copied, is what you're trying to say.
Copied in the sense that's as good as your traditional systems. So if your security is weak, people can access that data, then yeah, it can be leaked. But now you have multiple points from where the data can be leaked. Yeah.
So with this, sir, I would like to thank you for sharing the knowledge that you have given us with respect to blockchain, and you have answered all the questions of the attendees. And so this is small token of appreciation that we would like to give it to you from Shahananka Kachi Engineering College. And so please accept it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you once again, everyone, for joining the call. Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir.